do a brief intro to myself and Amplifier, and then we'll jump on directly to the do's and don'ts. That's what I was thinking about. And of course, like 30 minutes should be super easy to do. And my 30 minutes usually turn into an hour. So I'm going to try to keep it short and to the point. So I think that I got my the stream pop up here that we are streaming. So
we are streaming to YouTube, not to Facebook yet, but we can maybe just go get started, and I'll get to Facebook as soon as I can.
Yep, it's up to Andy and Sylvia to say when I'm start.
I'm happy when the other Dan's happy. He's the caller.
Okay, then let's go, guys. So Facebook will be a little bit after, but I think we're going to be good. Okay.
Okay, awesome. Then I will start. Hi everyone. My name is Dan Trollstrom. Everyone calls me Dante, and I see I joined this meeting with my nickname as well. I work as an executive producer at Amplifier Game Invest. My background, I worked 15-16 years in the gaming industry. I have a bachelor's degree in game design. I have been coding since I was 10. I also have like an education with 3D and virtual reality from 2000. So it was hot even back then, I guess, and then it disappeared and then it came back. I worked at a lot of different companies. I worked at as a producer at Grin, working with Bionic Commando. I worked at Crytek UK, old Free Radical, working on Crisis 1 and Crisis 2, and I've also worked at Avalanche, heading up the Mad Max project in the beginning, and then I also worked on the Hunter series. But since 2016, I joined Amplifier Game Invest, which was then called Goodbye Kansas Game Invest, and we do things a little bit differently when it comes to publishing and investment. So just a quick little thing here, hopefully here. Today, we're based in Sweden, but we have associates all over the world. We have 14 studios in our family right now, and they're from everything from Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Austria, Spain, United States, United Kingdom, and in Italy. Working on a bunch of different things, and from the studios that we're working with, I'm pointing out like Tarsier Studios, that of course with the Little Nightmares franchise. We can also take Miss Games in Norway for their fishing simulators, and Neon Giant that has just released The Ascent on multiple platforms. We do things a little bit differently. We are a daughter company of Embracer, which are quite big. And when we started with the minority investments for equity in studios, and since we joined Embracer, we have changed that, and we now do two different things. We do acquisitions, meaning that we buy the entire company, or we start new studios. So either people that don't have an LLC or an Inc yet can come to us, and if they have something really cool and they want to create some great games with great people, then we can start that up together. And even though we might own 100% of many of the studios, for us, it is still your studio. And we really don't only talk the talk, we walk the walk. So we fund all of these studios until there's a point where they either select to go with an external publisher, or they want to self-publish or together with us, since we just started up our own publishing as well. So we work with a family of right now 14 different companies, and we're going to continue to do investments. And it is a family. This is 200 developers. We have a big community within these, so all of the studios talk, share, have a lot of events together, learn from each other, and also learn from us. And what we do is that we, at Amplifier, we mentor, coach, and help way more than just investing money. So we are like a partner for life, and our idea is never to do an exit. Once you're in the family, you can stay with the family. The business deals are really good. You can get bonuses, but we don't pay based on milestones at all. We do have budgets. We follow them with you. And the good thing here that we have, together with the studios, we can direct the game, meaning that if there needs to be an extension of a a project, or we want to change it, or we want to do something else with it, and the studio comes to us with that, we're very happy to have those discussions and move it. So we're very, very active. I speak to 5 of these studios that I work very closely with, like multiple times a week. So we are a true partner that we're working with them. And most of them that work that with the Amplifier Game Invest usually have 15 years of game industry knowledge, and which is really cool, because a lot of us have worked on many, many games. Now I'm going to leave this, and we're going to talk about pitching mistakes, and I guess do's and don'ts of this. So the first thing we're going to talk about is do your homework on the audience. Many of these things you might have heard about yesterday as well, and some of the things that both, with the previous speakers as well. But I think it's really, really important that you do your homework on the audience. Who are you meeting? Who are you talking to? Because there is a difference between project investors, I would say that as publishers, and equity investments. Are you looking for a long-term partner? You can find that in both publishers and equity investors or VCs. But the question is, like, who do you want to talk to, and how do you do it? And I think it's very, very different. If you're doing investments in projects, you're looking at maximizing the profit from the project. If you're looking at equity investments, and for example, like Amplifier does, we're looking for growth and helping out. And if you have a team of 3 people and you have a vision that you believe in and that we support, and you want to be 20 people over 3 years' time, we're going to do that journey together. But it's very different how you're pitching this to. Are you looking for a publisher or a long-term partner in the company? Also remember that publisher investor gets hundreds, and someone named Team 17 that say like they get thousands. They get a lot of pitches each and every year. And that's super important for you, because sometimes you just send off a pitch and that's like a PDF or something like that, or a presentation before you even get to have a meeting. So it's super important that you realize how most investors and publishers read them if they get these many pitches. And usually what I do, my experience, is that I usually open up the PDF or the presentation and I scroll the way through quite quickly, just to see how it looks, to get an overall feel of the presentation itself. Then I go back and go deeper into it. And I think it needs to be clear. A pitch needs to be clear, because you only get X amount of time, especially if you're just sending it in and you're not getting a meeting. You really need to be able to point out the things that are important in your presentation in itself. So having an easy to read material, but an early hook, apparently hook with a capital K in the end, because it's so important here in my presentation. Also understanding who you're addressing. And I think that Cassia brought up, for example, Paradox as a publisher before as well. And you need to do your homework on who you're talking to. Paradox is making hardcore strategy games most of the time. So if you want to pitch to them, you need to have that kind of game. If you're coming in with a console-based action adventure game, that is probably not their thing. So you're probably better to find out partners who are investing and work with those kind of titles than to waste your time on others. Because remember, if I get something that I cannot really relate to, I would probably just say no thank you directly. So I think it's important to know who you're talking to. And that could be, like right here in the presentation, based on game genres, platforms. Is the publisher investor, have they done any business in mobile? If not, it's probably a reason for that. They're not interested in mobile. They're not interested in VR at the point or that point in time. So I think it's important to really check them out, see what games they've released, how did they sell, what platforms are they looking at, do they have smaller budgets or do they have higher budgets? And I think that's super important. Some investors only have a cap of how much they want to invest or can invest. Same thing with publishers. If you would compare, I'm thinking of
Dan,
yes.
It's Andy here. Sorry to interrupt and be slightly rude, but I thought it was me, but I think we're still on the front page of your presentation, learning from pitching mistakes. I thought that was my bad, but I think there's more people are seeing exactly the same as I'm seeing.
Okay, let me see what's going on. What if I do this instead? Do you see more now?
Yeah. Perfect.
So if I flip, you see?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so super short. These are the studios.
Thank you.
Next up. So this is the page that we were on, right? We were talking about do the homework of the audience here. So publisher investors, different things on top. We were talking about the clarity of the pitches and how important it is to have this strong early hook. Understanding the publisher investors that have different focuses. So genres, platforms, budgets. Now it maybe makes more sense, just not me rambling for 30 minutes without showing you actual text. So I think it's important. There are smaller publishers. They have a limited budget, and if you're going to make something for 5 million euros, they won't be able to do it. So try to do your homework and understand what range they are in. Also, there are, plenty of bigger publishers that also look to invest at least 5 million euros into your project. So if your project is 1 million euro, they're also probably not going to be interested. My pro tip is to make variations of your presentation as well, because you're presenting the team, you're presenting your company, you're presenting your game, but you might be talking to a lot of different audiences. So I usually make variations of it. So you can take one variation that fits the audience the best. And that can depend on if you have 5 minutes to pitch something or if you have 30 minutes to pitch something. So instead of just jumping through a long presentations and just saying, let me try to find that slide, I think it's better to make a few versions of it. So it's adapted to the audience and the meeting time. And also using standardized formats. When it's online presentations, Google Sheets or PowerPoint, and if it's offline, and make sure that you always send after a meeting a pitch, your offline material. And I would use PDFs because it's commonly used everywhere and not some weird sharing thing. It's better to send it via email to your audience instead of sharing it somewhere else, because sooner or later you're going to forget who's got access to it and can you view other people looking at it. So it's better if you personally send it as a thank you for the follow-up. Here are the here's the presentation or the notes. I've had a talk about this on last year's Konsoll, about this natural flow of information through a presentation. So a little plug for myself and Konsoll here. You can go back and watch last year's thing about the presentation or how to pitch here. What I see a lot, or what we see a lot, is that there's not a flow of information. And I think that's super important. There needs to be a narrative that I speak about in that lecture, that there's clear bridges from page to page, from each topic to topic, that needs to feel natural. And it needs to be easy to be able to take in as well. And I have an example later on, but make sure that it's not too busy. Don't cram it in with numbers. Don't cram it with things that are not really there to support either you talking or for me to understand it. And also don't make it too long. And this is back to the variations. It's understanding, what are you presenting? I have seen pitches that are like 50 slides long. And that is just incredibly hard, because I'm not super interested in your specific lore or your map of the world right now, because you have not even told me what the game is about. So I think it's like being concise and respect your own time and our time as well. And I always found it good that references and images are really, really good, preferably your own art. You can use others' art if it's just called out as that, right? Because you will always have a question, this thing that you have in the background, is that your own or is it someone else's? And I think it's great to create a reference so we are aligned with what you're trying to make when it comes to a game. And the last thing here is about order in your presentation. And this was called out by one of my colleagues, Henrik, that you met yesterday as well. I would say if you have a strong team or you have a studio that have already released the game, it's good to present the team quite first and your studio. This is our accolades. This is what we have released, and this is what we're going to do next. That's a great hook. But if it's a new company or a new team, then the game is probably stronger. Then you would start with the game and take the team later. Get us hooked on either the team or the game. Hopefully, it's going to be both anyway. But that's a slight little order shift there, depending on where you are in your current development. This is something that we also miss or see all the time. Like, do remember to tell us what you need. You've presented the team, you've presented your game, you say what you want to do, but you're not missing, or you are missing the most important thing, which is actually, what do you need from us? Do you need financing? Is it project funding? Is it company equity? Are you looking for a longer partnerships? Do you want to talk to Xbox? Do you want to talk, or Microsoft? Do you want to talk to Sony? Do you need help building your studio? Do you need, not only financial advice, but legal advice? Like, what do you need from us? Like, how can we help you build your studio? Or do you need production support from producers? Do you need art support? Like, what do you need? And in many times, we can go through a pitch and then not really sure what to do with it. This sounds interesting, but what do you need? And I think this is one of the most important things. Like, this is what we're trying to achieve. Why are you talking to me? Because I guess you're not just pitching a game to see if I like it. You want something from me, because that's my job, is to see, how can I help you? Is this a great opportunity for you guys and for us? And how can we do this together? But in many cases, the ask, that we call it, is forgotten in the presentation. So please make sure that you have that in there. Or you're going to have, the first question will be, so what do you need? So don't forget the most important question, the reason why you started it all. Preparation. Please come prepared. I would say that probably 90% of preparation is, to start pitching things, is to do your homework. Do your homework on your own, what you want to do, what you have now, but also do your homework, as you said already, on the audience. And then 10% is probably pitching. And there's going to be a lot of pitching anyway, so those 90% are super important. So this is an example structure that I have, like, start with an elevator pitch, slide and hook, just kind of know, what am I looking at? Brief background about the theme, setting, and the game world. Keep that short, because there will be another slide of a don't. Talk a little bit about core mechanics of the game pillars. So you're just trying to give me an overview of the game and what you're intending to do. And then you shift from the game experience over to the product. And I've had multiple talks about this. There are two sides of the same coin, the game experience and the product. The game experience is what you experience in the game, of course, and that's what you express as game developers. The product is something that we sell. It's something on a shelf. It will not include your overall vision. It's something that we need to put in front of customers to buy. And I would say the difference here is then that there is a target audience. This will sell. What is the price point? Are you going to make DLCs? Is it a live op? What is it? What is it that you're selling from a product perspective? Because I think from a financial perspective, this is what we're really interested in to understand. And also to understand your need, like what we can help and support you with. Basic information about the product, which is usually platforms and monetization models. We're going to talk a little bit more about forecasting later on. But production timeline, how long, how expensive is it, where are you? And also forecast is talking about sales, which is really, really hard to do. But I think it's better to do an estimation of things where you would like to head, because then we can kind of measure of, this is what you want to do, this is what we believe it would be. Or to see, is there leverage here that we can work together with you guys to make it even better. Team presentation, depending on where it comes in this presentation we've already spoken about, and ending with the ask. And of course, open up for feedback and discussions. So those are a few do's. I think that we're going to go into the don'ts. And one of the don'ts is using unicorns. So for me, unicorns, this is my kind of like rough one-liner for it, like hugely successful games, usually coming out of nowhere, outselling all other games in the genre by a big factor. And we see this being used a lot in trying to promote your own product's sales forecast. We are making a game like Valheim, and we just sold, 9 million units now. And we're doing something similar, so we should easily be able to sell 9 million as well. And this is just not true. And I think that it is great to use unicorns to look at what they've done and analyze that and say, they have done this, which you find is very interesting. What can we do that is kind of similar or use the same kind of strategy? I think that's smart. That shows that you have understood it. You've once again done your homework. But I've seen multiple things, or multiple pitches, many pitches, where you take, if you look at a market section or market space, they usually take the best sellers, only the best sellers, which might be 80% of that market, and say, we're going to do this, kind of forgetting this. I've heard people saying, a worst case scenario for us would be to sell 200,000 units. And that's not true. The worst case scenario is 0. That is the worst case scenario. It's 0. So I think it's just not using unicorns in specifics. And as I say here as well, just because they succeeded, doesn't mean that you will. Many rocket games, many games that have just gone boom, have done that in a multitude of different reasons. And many times it is because they just happen to release it at a time where luck was there. It was a good game, but luck. Influencers picked it up and it just became this snow rolling thing. It just became bigger and bigger and bigger. And no one could really foresee this. And that's why you also see them usually coming out of nowhere, because they was not planned. It took everyone by surprise. That's why they're called unicorns. If we could have planned this, it would be perfect. And I think plenty of investors and publishers are trying to find what is that X factor. And it's super hard because you simply do not know. And also unicorns doesn't mean that that part of the market will explode. There might be a one-time off. And so I think it's important not just to follow. It's the understanding what happened. And is there anything we can replicate that is similar to that without just leaning on those edge cases? And hopefully that makes sense. This is also something that we see. Trash talking other games and companies. That you are, to promote your own game, you're saying, we're going to do what this game did, but most of it or many things in it is actually really badly done or it's really shit. We're just going to make the same game, but a lot better. And there's a difference here. You can look at games and you can take a feature, and you can look at it and say, they did this, which is really cool or interesting. We think that there's, an opportunity here to expand on that and make it better. And you can do that by talking about your game and referring to other games and looking at analysis you have done, instead of saying, this game is shit, we're going to do it a lot better. Because then you were downplaying someone else's development instead of having your game and your company stand on its own. I have interrupted people in pitching to us saying, you need to stop. Because already, I haven't even come to the ask yet. But remember that when you're pitching, we're not only looking at the business opportunity, or part of the business opportunity is working with you long-term. So we're seeing how you're behaving, how you're presenting, how you're receiving feedback. In my mind, the cooperation has already started. And trash talking other games and companies is a good way for me to just go, what will be different when I join? When we join, what will happen? And so the classic thing, and I think that, the previous speakers have always said, like, we invest in people, we invest in a crew, talented teams, and what we're also looking for. And I always think about, like, if we were out traveling somewhere, if we got stuck in the same hotel room, could we stay there at the hotel room together, crammed in there for a few days, when the storm passed, and we would not kill each other? That's the kind of, I want to get to know you professionally, and also, bond over something, like have some sort of relationship, like a friendship or something like that. That would makes it things a lot easier. So think about this when you're pitching. Talk about your own thing. And then I kind of like, there's a bunch of other things here. Do I have a few more minutes just to do this? We don't have to go in super deep.
Yeah, Dan, you've got all the time you want, man.
Perfectly. We'll be here until Monday. No, I think I think this is actually the last one, but there's so much more to talk about, of course. The first point here is my personal thing. Like, don't talk too much about game lore early on. I need to understand what the game is and what the product is before we go super deep into lore. And I know that a lot of designers and a lot of narrative designers have been thinking about this game for 10 years. Here we go. This is the lore. This is the history in the world. This is why this mountain is over here. And I'm not even sure if this is a city builder or if it's an RPG. This is just my personal thing. It's like, we can take that later. I want to get into the nitty-gritty of stuff, what the game is. Good tip is also, you're going to get a lot of questions. I mean, it's inevitable. And hopefully the more questions you get is because people are interested in hearing more or trying to understand something. And you will not have all the answers to all those questions. If you're prepared, you have answers to most of them. But I think it's multiple times. I've also seen I'm asking a question and it's this kind of, and after that, there's a 5-minute rant with no context or content. It's way better to say, that is a good idea. That's a good question. Let me get back to you after the meeting if you're interested, and I'll give you a proper answer to it. It's always better to say, we don't know. And there's fundamental things about what is your monthly burn rate for your studio is something that you need to be able to answer. That's more of a check for me. Do you have your checks and balances? Do you know the basic information? But other things, when it comes deeper into a game design or a product or this or that, is it a premium or a free to play? If you haven't decided, just say, we haven't really decided yet. And this is the reason, because once again, it's about honesty. It's about saying, maybe we can have some input on it, right? Because we have our data as well. And feedback. Never dismiss feedback. You're going to get hundreds of no's. Hopefully less. You only need one yes. But the feedback is the most, valuable currency from the meeting. Feedback or questions, and write them down. Take it with you. Analyze it afterwards. If you're getting multiple no's and you're getting the exact same feedback about a specific game feature or how you plan to go to market from professionals that do this for a living, trying to find good deals, trying to take great games and products to the market, you should probably listen to it. And if you see that reoccurring, you should probably take a step back and look at your game and product, saying like, are we doing the right thing here? Because everyone is saying the same thing. Don't get defensive. I think it's important here to say, like, stand up for what you think is right, but don't defend it just because you can. Why are you doing this instead of that? Well, what do you know? And then they're like, that's not a good answer. Like, what do you know? Or, well, you apparently haven't played RPGs. It's like, okay, I think we're done here. So I think it's always a discussion. And I think it was Cassie that also talked a little bit about the negotiations and talking and finding a partnerships. And I think that this is important. It's about having these feedback loops, questions, answers, discussing, have you thought about it this way? We're looking from different perspectives. And that kind of shows me how open you are for this, because we are going to work together. That's the dream, right? So I have the post meeting wrap up afterwards and kind of say, how did it go? Where can we do better? Do we need to change order in anything? These questions came up. We need to be better prepared for that next time. Super important. Also, don't give up. Don't give up. Pitching is an art form. It really is an art form. And all the audiences are different. And you might have to do certain changes in your presentation. We usually say that a no from us might be a no now, but not in a year. It has very much to do with, like if you look at publisher investors, how much money do we have available right now? For a publisher, it's very much about the release slots. And they might do 4 to 6, games per year, which means they are slotted in over that year. And they're planning 3 years ahead. And maybe for this specific kind of game that you're pitching, there's no slot for it. It's already filled up. So it might be a no now, but not in a year's time. So even if we said no to many, many studios for investments, I still keep in contact with them, or they keep in contact with me. They send me things, hey, we reworked this. What do you think about this? And, it's not in the deal flow part. It's we have become close and we're discussing their game and their studio vision. So maybe in 2 years ahead of time, we might be able to do it when we're closer together. So it might be a no now, but not later. And not everyone is looking for the same thing. And sometimes I think that a no from a publisher or an investor can also be a good thing. Because if you would force that relationship, maybe it wouldn't work out anyway. And I guess this is on me now. Here, don't mismanage time for your presentation, because I might be running over here. But I think it's back to a 5-minute pitch has to be done very differently from a 30-minute pitch meeting. So always find out how much time do they have. I mean, it's very different if you go to Gamescom and you've booked the 30-minute meeting and you go there, then you will probably get the 30 minutes. But if you're going there and knock on their door and ask, do you have 5 minutes? And they say yes, that means 5 minutes. If they feel it's more important or feel it's super interesting, they will adjust their schedule. They will find a slot later in the week or ask you to come back later. So let them adjust it in that case. And for us, when we do, I think that we probably have 5-6 meetings with the studios before we start saying, okay, let's say you want to do this, we want to do this, how do we do it? So it's a lot of meetings before that, because you kind of want to feel the vibe in the room and see how can we take the small steps towards making a deal. So lots of don'ts and a few do's. And of course, many of the don'ts can turn into do's as well if you rectify them. I will also be at Konsoll later this year, both having a lecture about investment and also be on the panel and be on the business day. So hopefully we can meet again. This is my email address. Please email me if you have any follow-up questions that can't be answered now. Visit our webpage, because we've been doing a lot of stuff within supporting, coaching, and mentoring way beyond like the studios that we have in our family right now. We're always happy to, give some hints and tips and tricks going forward. So I think that's it for me. Maybe over to questions if there are any. Thank you.
And that was brilliant, which we expected. So I think you kind of double delivered there. 2 things I would just say. Brilliantly that you asked if we were okay on time. So you were kind of aware of that stuff, just proving exactly what the advice that you've been giving to these guys is. And the second thing I think that's come across from all of the speakers, people buy from people, okay? And it's really, really important. Nobody's going to do a deal sitting, frankly, on their ass, hoping to do it all by email or some other messaging service. You've got to get in front of people. You've got to talk, but you also got to listen. And I think that's come across loud and clear from all of our speakers. So important. And what's great about the team on this call is that everybody is able to talk. Everyone's able to elucidate about their game, their position, their vision. This is a great thing. So people buy from people. Never forget that. Okay.
No, I think that's super important. We usually, I mean, now there's been a pandemic, which of course kind of kept us all at home, but we usually visit each studio when we are moving in the right direction. Not only to meet the rest of the team. It's not only the founders, it's the team that is important. And we usually have dinner together because you want to see how people are, outside work hours. And one thing that I didn't mention here is that, remember, when you pitch to us, it sounds like we're just the receiver of information, like we're the one judging you. But remember that you are also judging us, right? You need to feel comfortable with the partner that you're talking to. Do they ask intelligent questions? Are they understanding the game? Do they share the passion for what you're trying to do? So it's for as much as you to trust your gut feeling of, did that meeting feel good for us? Is this someone that we would like to work with in the long term? And I think that's super important to mention. Apparently everything is super important that I said.
That's a great point. I've actually got one question for you. So yeah, last 18 months, the world changed. Some would argue that the games industry was ahead of that. And we have worked in some studios and some organizations in a kind of a remote basis. From your perspective at Amplifier, do you think that is a disadvantage? So in other words, you want to come to meet the team and the studio. The studio is collectively 7-8 people split all over the globe, different time zones, different cultures, everything. The net result of what this team is doing is amazing. Could be amazing. Let's say that. But if it's a remote team, is that problematic, do you think, for investors such as yourselves?
Not really. I think that we haven't seen the end of it, so to speak. We did start up a studio, Plucky Bytes, during the pandemic, and we've done investments. I think we've done 3 or 4 investments during this pandemic without actually meeting the team in real life. Many of them have been working from home, but more throughout the pandemic. But a few of them, including Plucky Bytes, is actually a remote studio. They have different challenges. I mean, it's another set of challenges having a remote studio compared to working in a studio together. Having everyone in a studio is a different thing.
Yeah.
I mean, just buying toilet paper and coffee and those things are just some of the issues having it together. Personally, before the pandemic, I was a little bit or quite skeptical against remote work. Having worked in the industry on big teams ranging from 20 to 100 people, I was a bit skeptical about it, like how would this work? But I have to admit that I was proven wrong. I think it's been a lot more efficient than I thought it would be. Maybe because everyone's kind of embraced it or had to embrace it and taken it on board and worked through it. So we're not that scared of it because we have done it. And I also think that it's the way going forward that in a globalized world, so to speak, that if I can create a great team and I sit in Stockholm and there's someone in Los Angeles, someone in London, someone in Shanghai, and they are the best people and we're joined from that, why would that? Then I've created my dream team. Yeah. And I would stand by it, and I think that Amplifier would also stand by it. We would just ask other questions, I think, like how are they set up and how are they supposed to meet those challenges that come specifically for a remote studio.
That's a brilliant answer. I think that's a reassuring answer as well, because I think there's from my perspective, having run a remote business for 25 years, it doesn't come without challenge for sure. But I think, like everything, it's not one size fits all. It's not an either or. I think there's space for remote teams as well as studio-based teams, and I think that's great because that just gives more diversity, more inclusion, more opportunity to work cross-border, cross-culture, cross-time zone, which is always that can be a problem. Time zone.
Yeah, I would say one of the challenges we've seen or that's popped up is one thing is of course employee law between different regions and different countries. I mean, in the European Union, that's easier, but it becomes more complicated. Another thing is logistics of hardware back and forth, especially when it comes to internships that we've seen as well.
Yeah. Great.
But it's another set of challenges.
Well, it was a great talk. Has anyone got any questions for Dan before we take a short break for lunch? Okay. So you will have noticed we have run about 30 minutes behind, but that's all been positive because Cremena, Cassia and Dan have really nailed this morning's session brilliantly. So thank you to the three of you. Thanks also to everybody else who's been listening and adding in questions. What I'm going to propose, if it's okay, is that we break for a 30-minute lunch. I don't know if that sounds terrible. If it is a problem, please say so and we will adjust it. But I think, that the value is not the lunch. The value is in coming back and hitting the next session. So if anyone's got any objection,